Good afternoon, dear colleagues. It is 11 a.m. and we are starting our meeting. Our team of moderators is working with you today, Olga Bondarenko and Yelizaveta Stepanova. Welcome to the section GSD 2024, Geography for a Sustainable Future. This section is a part of ICSF 2024 conference. The International Conference on Sustainable Futures, Environmental, Technological, Social, and Economic Matters, ICSF, is a peer-reviewed international conference, which is the premier interdisciplinary forum for social scientists, life scientists, engineers, and practitioners to present their latest research results, ideas, developments, and applications. The ICSF contributions in all aspects of sustainable development focused on intersection of sustainability, environment, and technology, and their largest implications for corporations, government, education institutions, regions, and society, both at present and in the future. Before we start presenting the reports, we would like to remind you of some of the rules of our cooperation. Please keep the time limit, 7 to 10 minutes for the presentation of the report and 5 to 7 minutes for questions. We hope that you, like us, are in a safe place. If you have any questions for our speakers after the presentations, you can ask them in the chat or orally by raising your hand at the bottom of your screen in advance. The language of our meeting is English. Today, power outages are expected in Ukraine. If this happens, we will need a few minutes to connect to an alternative source. Please accept this with kind understanding. We thank you in advance for your participation in our conference and look forward to fruitful cooperation over the next 4 hours. For the 4th year in a row, in May, we gather from all over the world to discuss sustainable development. Development that meets the needs of the people of today without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The first section of our seminar took place on May 21st, and today our seminar continues. The first speakers to present their scientific achievements invite us to discuss the problem resource savings method of extracting cucumber and melon seeds. We invite Natalia Dotsenko to deliver a presentation.
Hello everyone, I'm here. They are representing the resource saving method of extraction cucumber and melon seeds. The production of seed material on melon and vegetable crops is one of the most important problems that have arisen in the field of processing agricultural products. In the southern part of Ukraine, there were specialized farms for production of seeds of vegetable crops. The volume of this production of cucumber and melon seeds was significant and provided seed material to almost all farms of Ukraine. Thus, the development of seed production of vegetable and melon crops, such as cucumber and melon, will provide an opportunity to provide the economy of Ukraine with seed material. High-quality seed material is one of the conditions for increasing productivity and reducing the cost of cultivated products. And well-organized seed separation in farms increases the production crops by 20–25%. The main optimization criteria we use to assess the quality of the technological process is damaging of seeds, purity of seeds, and loss of seeds. The values must meet the following requirements. The amount of seed damaging should not exceed 5%. The value of seed purity should strive for maximum level, and losses should tend to minimum volume. They represented the ranked chart of factors affecting the quality of work, to statistical assessment of the significance of factors, and after ranking and determining insignificant factors. They represented the scheme of the separator for realization resource-saving method of extracting cucumber and melon seed. The separator is a system consisting of two sieves. With the help of upper sieves, the cross fraction of the crushed peel is separated, while the lower sieve separates the seeds. Other fractions fall into the tray, namely pulp, pulp particles, and juice. In order to reduce the loss of seeds in the peel fraction, it is advisable to use the mode of the inertial separator. Carrying out additional fraction of the material against the edges of the holes in the peel fraction reduces the seed content. The mode of the vibrating conveyor for the second sieve is used to increase the passage of pulp through sieve openings. The technological process is as follows. The fruits are loaded with a special conveyor into the hopper to the hopper 2 of the grilling chamber 3. Crushed by drums 4 and 5, mass enters the sieve 10. The dimension of the cells of the upper sieve for cucumber is 5 on 15 millimeters. On its surface, the crushed peel, the always sieve product, is removed from the technological zone. Seeds, pulp, and small pieces of peel equal in size to the seeds, products of grating, fall on the surface of the sieve of the second sieve, 11 with the size of the holes. Seeds with impurities on its surface are fed for further cleaning, and pulp, juice, and other small impurities fall into tray and from it into pump form. They represented the technological schemes of extracting cucumber and melon seeds with basic and experimental separator. The second scheme excludes stage of rubbing seeds that can prevent its damaging and allows to significantly reduce water consumption when washing seeds and achieve an improvement in the quality of the technological process. They represented the result of the research, namely levels and range of variation factors and two-dimensional intersections of response surface. So factors affecting on the quality of the technological process of the proposed solution of the cucumber and melon seed separator are identified. There are the angle of inclination of sieve surface, the frequency of oscillations of the sieve, the amplitude of its oscillation, the angle of application of the vibration force, and the length of the sieve. The following optimization criteria were chosen: purity of seeds, the extent of the damage, and the level of seed losses. The factors that have the greatest influence on the quality of the technological process have been established. The frequency of the vibration of the screen, the amplitude of vibration, and the length of the working surface of the seed. At the same time, the ranges of variation and of independent factors made it possible to ensure modes of both inertial separation and vibration separation. The ranges of the optimal combination of independent factors are as follows. In case of seed injury, from 4 to 6% purity, 75% loses within 6 to 7%. A necessary condition of the frequency of oscillation is from 9 to 42, and the amplitude of oscillation of 24 to 32 millimeters, and the length of the working part of the sieve is from 1.2 to 1.6 meters. In the vibroseparation mode, oscillation frequency more than 30, amplitude more than 35 millimeters, with an angle of application of the vibration force 10 degree. Seed damage does not exceed 5% and the frequency within 70-71%. At the same time, in the inertial mode separator, uh, seed loss at the level of from 5 to 6% is achieved. At the same time, the inertial mode separator uh, combines with the vibration mode separator, and it makes the work of the proposed separator more effective. So the prospects for further research, our recommendation on the design schemes of separator, its kinematic modes, which allows to intensify the process of cleaning freshly separated wet seeds from organic impurities. Thank you for your attention.
We thank the speakers for their interesting presentation. Dear colleagues, the speakers have finished their report. Do you have any questions for them? Yes, we have one question in chat. Please tell us how the price of your separator differs from the similar ones.
Okay, thank you for your question. Thank you to the all conference chairs and participants for your attention. It is not the it is only the laboratory example. Now we are trying to implement it into the production of the seeds. At this stage, we have the patent on this separator, but according to the previous economical calculations, the price, the cost of production the seed will be, according to this separator, will be less on 30% around this. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. And we have one more question. Your research is of practical importance. Has the resource-saving method of separating cucumber and melon seeds been implemented at any enterprises or not yet?
It was implemented in the laboratory at the basis of our university. Now we are working on this. It is quite difficult to implement this kind of separator into the enterprises, because all enterprises were in the at this type of production were in the Kherson region. So here now quite difficult is because of the war. That's a pity, but that's our reality. And now we are at the stage of we want to implement it into the enterprise of our Mykolaiv region, but it is only, now we are talking about it. We don't have such results, only laboratory results. Thank you.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And we are continuing. So currently, more and more climate scientists are recognizing the reality and significance of the global process of degassing the Earth in the process of climate change. The research results offered by our next scientists are very relevant, as mitigating the effects of climate change is the 13th goal of sustainable development. We would like to invite Maxim Tymchyshin to speak and present their report on methane gas degassing within Ukraine according to satellite data.
Topic: methane degassing within Ukraine according to satellite data. Global and regional Ukraine climate development, especially in recent years, calls this concern in the world community. As the consequences of these changes threaten serious natural disaster, intensification of natural phenomena, increasing in drought, floods, fires, etc. Therefore, recently the problem of creating an indication base of global and regional changes in the Earth's climate for their forecast and adaptation to the development of these events in the future is becoming more and more urgent. The gathering processes play an important role in the formation of deposits of various minerals, not only oil and gas deposits, but also ore endogenous, partly exogenous, and mineral water deposits. The impact of the gathering on the weather and climate condition on the planet is evidenced by the fact that the center of the strongest animals in the ozone content of the planet are located above the zone of and centers of hydrogen and methane degassing. These are RIP and fourth zone or nodes of their intersection, as well as the center of modern tholeiitic and alkaline volcanism or ancient ultramafic kimberlite volcanism. The indicator in the study will be the gas component of the fluid region of the lithosphere methane. Data on the concentration of methane CH4 in the atmosphere over the territory of Ukraine for the period 2019-2022 were used, which were obtained from the Sentinel-5P satellite using the Google Earth Engine platform. To interpret the result of remote research data, the result of ground research were used SHIM of the oil and gas geological zoning of the Dnipro-Donetsk oil and gas burn region and map of the tectonic zone. With the use of geoinformation software, the following was done. First, all geological data presented in the TMVGS84 Zone 36 coordinate system. Second, 9 main tectonic structures of the Ukraine were vectorized based on the tectonic zoning map. Third, according to the oil and gas geological zone in SHIM of the Dnipro-Donetsk oil and gas bearing region, vectorization of 12 oil and gas region was carried out. This is the most reliable materials on the content of hydrocarbons on the territory of Ukraine. The sites of the districts allow to receive reliable data from the satellite. Each of the districts is marked with a Latin letter from A to O. 9 vectorized contours of the main tectonic structures of Ukraine are presented on this slide. The general regularities of the distribution of methane on the territory of Ukraine were evaluated using the Google Earth Engine platform based on calculation of the CH4 methane concentration in the atmosphere for the period 2019-2022. The data were obtained from the Sentinel-5P satellite and combined with the contours of the main tectonic structures of Ukraine. A visual analysis of the compiled map proved that methane is found in the atmosphere throughout the territory of Ukraine. There are no areas where methane is absent. The content of methane naturally increased from the north-northwest to the south and southwest. This excludes the influence of vegetation swarms and other anthropogenic factors on the recorded content of methane in the atmosphere. A comparative analysis of methane distribution within no oil and gas bearing areas Western Carpathian, Southern Scythian Plate, and Eastern Dnipro-Donetsk Depression showed significant difference between them. The western area is characterized by the lowest average value of missing content. The southern area is characterized by the highest value of missing content, and the eastern area is characterized by intermediate values of the missing content. The established discrepancies are probably related to no peculiarities in the localization of hydrocarbon deposits within these three areas. The relationship between the content of methane in the atmosphere and the content of hydrocarbons within the oil and gas bearing areas of the Dnipro Donetsk depression established by drilling data was analyzed. The first graph analyzed the dependence of methane content on the size of oil and gas bearing areas. The second graph shows the relationship between the specific reserves of hydrocarbons million tons per square kilometers within each oil and gas-bearing region of the Dnipro-Donetsk depression and the methane content in the atmosphere above this region. The analysis of the complied graph proved that all oil and gas-bearing region Dnipro-Donetsk depression are reliably divided into two groups. First group includes 7 districts I, L, E, K, O, P, A, and the second group included 5 districts G, H, F, D, C. Oil and gas bearing region of the first group I are characterized by minimal hydrocarbons reserve and the maximum difference in missing content. Thus, extreme maximum and minimum values of missing content are marked by two regions, A and I, within which no hydrocarbon deposits have been established. Significant differences in missing content within the region of the first group are probably caused by corresponding differences in the permeability of the rocks that make up this region. Thus, in the district of the first group, there is no dependence between the size of methane reserve within their boundaries and the values of missing content. Oil and gas bearing areas of the second group are characterized by the highest value of hydrocarbon reserve within the boundaries. Within their boundaries are also the largest Dnipro Donetsk depression deposits in terms of reserves. At the same time, with an increase in the values of specific reserves of hydrocarbons within the oil and gas bearing region, there is a decrease in the content of methane in the atmosphere. Such a dependence is possibly related to the lowest permeability of the rock of the region and the presence within this oil and gas bearing region of the best local structures within which the maximum localization of hydrocarbons migrating in the Earth's crust occurs. According to the data of measurement of methane content in the atmosphere of Ukraine from the Sentinel-5P satellite, a map of the distribution of methane within the country was complied. The existence of a dependence between the content of methane in the atmosphere and the content of hydrocarbons within the oil and gas-bearing region of Dnipro-Donetsk depression has been established. The most productive oil and gas-bearing region of Dnipro-Donetsk depression are characterized by a relatively narrow interval of changes in the missing content in the atmosphere. The distribution of missing content within the main tectonic structures of Ukraine is very complex and is probably not related to the specific of their development. This problem needs further research. Based on the conduct research, it can be confidently stated that there is a rather complex relationship between the reserve of hydrocarbons in the lithosphere and the content of methane in the atmosphere. In further studies of the processes of the gases of the Earth, it is expedient to the study, in addition of the methane and the gases that are part of the gases released by the Earth's surface and which are genetically related to each other, as well as the thermal field and other physical fields. The research of the Earth's gas and processes provide additional data for understanding problems related to climate change, namely the composition of the atmosphere. Thank you for your attention.
Dear speakers, thank you a lot for your informative presentation. Dear colleagues, do you have any questions for the speakers? We have one. No. Okay, so dear colleagues, if you have any questions, let us remind you that you can ask these questions in the chat or orally by raising your hand at the bottom of your screen in advance. And we have one question. Lydia, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Maxim. Thank you for this nice presentation. And I have one question. How do you think are the oil and gas field, oil and gas mining territory among the main factors of pollution by methane in Ukraine? Or we have another source by pollution? Please turn on your microphone.
We can't hear you because your microphone is off. Turn it on, please.
Yes, yeah, we has another greenhouse gases that emission.
Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your answer. And we have one more question in chat. The question by Ihor Holoshin. And the question sounds this way. What is the impact of anthropogenic factors on research results?
Yes.
Наш продукт, который мы использовали, уже враховывает.
The product that we use in this research contain these anthropogenic factors, the impact of anthropogenic factors.
Нет, скажи, нет. Скажи, нет.
No.
Сейчас, одну секундочку. Месторождение метана, антропогенный фактор мы не враховували.
In this research, anthropogenic factor in oil and gas bearing, we don't include.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And we have the last question for you. You have analyzed the relationship between methane content in the atmosphere over the territory of Ukraine using the GEE web platform. Could you tell us, please, why have you chosen this platform and how to access this program?
We use Google Earth Engine in this research because of with help of Google Earth Engine environment, we can fast and simply search the space images and other database. These help us to use some mathematical operations, and this Google Earth Engine environment is useful for each other. This is a cheap program and allow us to operate and download it download the space images for next processing in other specialized programs.
Thank you a lot for your questions and for your answers. And we are moving on. Equally important for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals is to overcome hunger, achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agricultural development. In the context of all the above, our next report is of particular interest. We invite Vitaly Makohon to present his research on the topic assessment of trends in the functioning of the grain industry of the EU countries using ADLR modeling.
Autocorrelation and structural shifts. ARDL is an approach that allows to take into account the relationship between factors in production. This method allows for the inclusion of non-stationary variables at the I0 and I1 levels. ARDL reflects the lack of effect of factors on the dynamic of variables, including lags, which allows to take into account the correlation between them. A dynamic error correction model can be built from RDL to integrate short-term dynamics with long-term equilibrium without losing long-term information. There are a number of approaches to formalizing dynamic relationships. In particular, one of them is the use of the lag of the resulting indicator as an independent variable simultaneously, with independent variables characterizing the processes in the current period. Formula 1. It is recognized that a change in the regressor x may have consequences in other periods of time, and therefore the consequences of management decisions in the current period may be unpredictable and affect production results not only in the current period, but also in subsequent periods. Instead, taking into account the influence of the lag of the resulting indicator on its current value, we have a dynamic model with one independent variable and its lags, Formula 2. After combining Formula 1 and Formula 2, we obtain a dynamic model with lag-dependent and explanatory variables. This model is an autoregressive distributed lag model that includes lags for the factor and outcome components. In general, in its expanded form, it can be represented as an infinite lag model in which the autoregressive characterizes the effect of its lag on the outcome function, and the lagged component reflects the effect of lagged x. The theory of production functions is based on a model that analytically describes the relationship between the accumulation of resources, their consumption and output. For wheat production, the outputs are the output in physical or value terms, and the inputs are the consumed resources, operating costs, or both. An important element of resource potential is soil fertility. Their direct inclusion in the regression model is quite problematic, given the complex nature of the concept, and their reduction to an economic equivalent requires a number of assumptions, which complicates the model itself and reduces the quality of the forecast. Resource potential and production technology are the main components of the production potential of agricultural sector. Their quality affects the culture of farming. Crop yields for previous periods can serve as an indicator of farming quality. This allows us to use an autoregressive production function to predict production results. Traditional production functions are characterized by a mutual correlation between the cost of inputs, machinery maintenance, and others. The difficulty in formalizing inputs and outputs is compounded by the consideration of the after-effects of fertilizers, in particular phosphate fertilizers, which affect soil fertility. To overcome these problems, a multivariate cointegration RDL model can be used. Accounting for the feedback of technological and economic efficiency on costs is important, especially when considering the price of a product. This price affects the level of unit costs, which increase or decrease productivity in the next period. In the RDL model, it is reasonable to include lags of the selling price together with lags of yield and costs. However, the inclusion of both prices in the model may worsen its quality due to the complex dynamic relationship at the I2 level. Therefore, price dynamics were replaced by the indicators of cost recovery for the production of different wheat varieties, which are reliable determinants of cost in the current period. Taking into account the inflationary nature of input prices requires that costs be brought into comparable terms. Due to the restrictions imposed by the full-scale war in Ukraine, Data from European farms were used to analyze the cost of wheat production. In particular, the data on specific costs of wheat production of French farms are available on the Eurostat website. Thus, our model included indicators of yield, production costs and constant prices, and payback of cost of production and marketing of soft and durum wheat. The descriptive statistic of this dynamic series and their graphical integration show a trend of increasing return on cost of durum wheat production and stationarity of other series. At the same time, against the background of relatively higher variation of the indicator of costs at constant prices and their payback in the production of durum wheat, the yield and payback of cost of soft wheat production is moderate, which positively characterizes the common agriculture policy of the European countries, which prevents the crisis of overproduction. The next step was to test the series for stationarity. The ADF test for the variables included in the model showed that the dynamic series of durum wheat yield and profitability of sales are stationary at the level I0. On other hand, the dynamic series of production costs per 1 hectare of wheat crops and the profitability of soft wheat sales are integrated at the first order I1. The analysis of this unusual data in the EVU's 12 software environments showed that the most appropriate model is the RDL model with the lowest AIC value, with a 3-year lag in yield and 4-year lags in the payback period for durum and soft wheat production costs. Instead, according to the chosen criterion of information similarity, the inclusion of lags of production costs per unit of crops in constant prices of 2010 is inappropriate, which requires further research. The modeling results show differences in the impact of lags of individual variables on yield dynamics. In particular, the first lag of the payback period for durum and soft wheat production costs, as well as the constant, had a p-value of 1%. The first lag of yield and the second lag of cost recovery for durum wheat production were significant at up to 5%. In turn, the current cost per unit of crops in constant 2010 prices, the second and third yield lags, the first and third payback lags of durum wheat production, and the second and third fourth payback lags of soft wheat production were significant at the 10% level. In contrast, in the indicators of cost recovery of soft wheat production in the reporting year and its first lag are not significant. The next step was a marginal test for the presence of a long-term relationship. It was found that the value of the F statistic exceeds the upper bound for I0, which suggests the presence of a long-run relationship at the 1%, 5%, and 10% significance levels. In view of this, we formed an error correction model that allows us to estimate how much of the disequilibrium is corrected. That is, how much of the previous period's disequilibrium is corrected and the current one. It is recognized that a positive ACT coefficient indicates a divergence and a negative one indicates a convergence. If it is equal to 1, then 100% of the deviation is adjusted during the period and the adjustment is instantaneous and complete. If ACT equal to 0.5, then 50% of the adjustment occurs each period. The value of ACT equal to 0 indicates that no adjustment occurs, and it cannot be said that there is a long-term relationship. For the analyzed model, the ACT is negative and highly significant, indicating convergence. Thus, it can be argued that 246.6% of the adjustment from short-term to long-term occurs in less than 4 months. Thus, the construction of a production function for the grain industry takes into account internal and external factors of production organization, but may face obstacles, such as the correlation between land fertility and operating costs. The non-synchronized dynamics of grain prices and input prices complicates modeling. One way to overcome these obstacles is to use an autoregressive depend lag model. The variables of the wheat yield model were indicator of operating costs in constant prices in 2010 and the payback of wheat production costs for 1990 to 2018, as well as lagged yields in the years preceding to the reporting year, which allow to take into account the efficiency of using the production potential of the grain industry. Structural gaps in the dynamics of prices for purchased inputs and wheat grain in the domestic Ukrainian market in 1990 to 2018, which led to its non-stationarity and prompted the construction of a model based on the indicators of range farms for the same period. The modeling showed the unequal influence of individual factors on the yield dynamics. In particular, the p-value at the level of 1% is observed for the return on costs of producing soft wheat grain in the reporting year, its first and third legs, and the second and third legs of the return on cost of producing during wheat. The sign of the regressors alternates due to a decrease in prices in years of excessive grain production and an increase in prices in lean years. The value of the unit cost regressor is also negative, and its legs were not included according to the AIC criterion. The reason for this is the industrial nature of the technologies used. Under such conditions, further research should focus on the behavior of lagged cost values and the impact of the common European policy of regulating agriculture productivity on their formation. Thank you for your attention.
Hi, my name is Yulia Semenova.
We thank the speakers for their interesting presentation, and we are ready to ask a few questions. Dear participants, we remind you that if you have any questions for our speakers, you can ask them in the chat or orally by raising your hand at the bottom of your screen in advance. Okay, so the question is, how has the Russian-Ukrainian war affected the grain industry in Europe? I have written the question in the chat. Dear colleagues, in the Ukraine, the air alert has started, so we ask you to move to a safe place. And Vitaly Makahon, we are waiting for your answer in chat. And our conference is continuing even if the air alert is on. While Vitaly Makahon is writing his answer in chat, we are continuing the work of our seminar. And the next report, Seismic Hazard Assessment in the Shamkir-Mingachevir Reservoir region through ground response analysis, will be presented by Yulia Semenova and Serhiy Skurativsky. You are welcome.
Hi, my name is Yulia Semenova. Currently, I am a leading researcher at the Institute of Geophysics of the National Academy of Science of Ukraine. Today, I am happy to present our study Seismic Hazard Assessment in the Shamkir-Mingachevir Reservoir region through ground response analysis. Seismic hazard parameters at a site not only depend on earthquake magnitude and the distance from the focus of an earthquake. but also on the surface geology. Surface geology can significantly worsen damage. These local effects, known as seismic site effects, can cause significant modification in amplitude level, spectral content, and duration of ground motion. These effects may increase the seismic hazard level even in areas with moderate seismicity. You can see an example of the Michoacan earthquake of 1985, where peak ground acceleration were higher in a city at a distance of 400 kilometers from the epicenter than at the epicenter itself. This happened due to the resonant amplification of ground motions by local soil. This example shows us that it is very important to predict seismic site effects before an earthquake occurs. How can we account for the seismic site effects? The most reliable approach is seismic ground response analysis. In total, there are three different approaches to ground response analysis: linear, equivalent linear, and non-linear. Depending on what type of behavior of the soil material we are considering under earthquake loading, we call it linear or non-linear ground response analysis. When we assume a linear stress-strain relationship of the material, we call it linear ground response analysis. When we assume it as nonlinear, we call it as nonlinear ground response analysis. Within nonlinear approach, there are two cases. One is equivalent linear, another is absolutely nonlinear. Depending on the magnitude of the expected earthquake and the ground conditions of the area, one or the other is used. Using equivalent linear approach, soil behavior is approximated as a Kelvin void solid. Then the equation of motion for a viscoelastic medium has the form 3. To take into account nonlinearity, we use an iterative procedure. On this slide, you can see the algorithm of this procedure. This procedure calculates values for shear modulus and damping ratio that are compatible with the strain induced in each sublayer. This algorithm is used by Prosaic, ERA, NERA, DeepSoil, and other similar programs. In regions prone to seismic activity, assessing the seismic hazard of hydroelectric power stations is crucial for maintaining the dependability and robustness of critical infrastructure. In this study, we investigate and compare the seismic response of near-surface soil at the Shamkir and Mingachevir hydroelectric power stations in Azerbaijan when subjected to earthquakes of different magnitudes utilizing equivalent linear approach. This analysis not only enables a direct comparison of the sites, but also facilitates the identification of underlying geological factors influencing their seismic vulnerability. At the first stage, we analyzed the seismicity of the study region according to the US Geological Survey. On this slide, we see earthquakes from 1973 to 2023 with a magnitude greater than 3. The left figure illustrates the earthquake magnitude distribution of the study area. The right figure displays the depth distribution of earthquakes. The earthquake magnitude distribution shows that most events in Azerbaijan occur with a magnitude of 4 to 4.5. This is almost 42%. The depth distribution analysis underscores a predominantly crustal nature of seismic events in Azerbaijan. Nearly all earthquakes are concentrated at depths of less than 50 kilometers, with the majority occurring at depths of up to 25 kilometers. This pattern suggests that the seismic activity in the region is primarily associated with crustal tectonic processes. To apply the equivalent linear approach of ground response analysis, we created simplified models of the upper 30-meter layers for Shamkir hydroelectric power station and Minghachevir hydroelectric power station. The slide shows a map of the average ground shear wave velocity of the upper 30-meter layer. Already from this map, we can identify vulnerable low-velocity areas. This slide shows changes in peak ground accelerations during the propagation of seismic waves from the bedrock to the surface through the upper 30-meter layer of soil at the sites of the Mingachevir and Shamkir hydroelectric power stations. Changes in peak ground accelerations for different amplitudes of input motion are shown. From the results we see, at the surface of both stations, the peak ground accelerations of the input motions increase. On the surface of the site of the Shamkir hydroelectric power station, peak ground acceleration increases more sharply than on the Mingachevir hydroelectric power station site. We see that, in general, in all cases, peak ground accelerations at the surface are roughly twice as large as at the bedrock level. On this slide from the Fourier amplitude spectra, we see the difference in the amplitude spectral content of seismic motions of the bedrock and the surface for input motion amplitudes of 0.19 G and 0.33 G. On the surface of the Mingachevir site, we observe amplitude amplification at lower frequencies compared to the case of Shamkir. On this slide, we also see the Fourier amplitude spectra of the bedrock and the surface, but at smaller input motions amplitudes of 0.05 G and 0.1 G. At smaller amplitudes, the amplification trend is the same. On this slide, we see the transfer functions of the soil profiles of the Mingachevir and the Shamkir hydroelectric power stations. We see that the transfer functions are generally similar, but we see peaks at different frequencies. Peaks at these frequencies indicate the potential for resonant amplification of seismic motions reaching almost 7 times. These graphs illustrate that the soil at Mingachevir hydroelectric power station amplifies seismic motions at lower frequencies compared to Shamkir. In the Mingachevir hydroelectric power station site, the worst-case scenarios are expected to be associated with low-frequency seismic motions, while in the Shamkir site, more unfavorable scenarios are expected to be associated with higher frequency seismic motions compared to Mingachevir site. Conclusions. The studies highlight the significant role of upper near-surface soils in affecting the dynamic of seismic motions as they move from bedrock to the surface. Soils with lower shear wave velocities absorb more seismic energy, resulting in lower peak ground acceleration at the surface. Soils at the Mingachevir station with lower shear wave velocity values compared to Shamkir exhibit resonant peaks at lower frequencies, indicated that soil softness dampens high frequencies while enhancing low frequencies. The amplification of low frequencies, up to 10 Hz, by certain soils can cause severe structural damage to most buildings due to resonant effects, as buildings typically have natural frequencies between 2 and 10 Hz. This emphasizes the importance of considering site-specific soil characteristics in seismic risk assessment and buildings design.
Thank you to the speakers. You were very convincing. And dear colleagues, if you have any questions for our speakers, you can ask them in the chat or by raising your hand at the bottom of the screen in advance. And we have a question. You state that the complexity of seismic risks assessment involves a complex interplay of geological, geotechnical, and environmental factors. Could you please detail these factors?
As shown in these studies, we have seen that the local structure of site can cause the amplification of seismic waves, because in fact we have some sort of resonance problem, and the structure of the ground beneath the surface of S causes the amplification of the seismic wave, which go to the bedrock. Therefore, among the factors which influence on the amplification are the structure of the ground layer, its properties, and especially the state of this layer. For example, in equilibrium or non-equilibrium, the structure of the material which composed of this layer. Therefore, we can state that interplay between geological and physical properties causes the interesting phenomena which we are studied in this research. Maybe this answer satisfy all.
Yes, thank you a lot for your answer. And we continue to examine the challenge of ensuring that transition to sustainable consumption and production patterns, which is another goal of sustainable development and a sustainable future. And we would like to invite Maxim Kvitko and Olena Licholat to speak about the accumulation of heavy metals by different representatives of biota in the operation zone of the Pridniprovska thermal power plant. You are welcome.
Dear conference participants, let me present a report to you. Accumulation of heavy metals by different representatives of biota in the operation zone of the Pridniprovska thermal power plant. Next slide, please. Various types of natural minerals, including hard coal, are intensively used by the industry of Ukraine and its energy complexes. The operation of industrial and energy complexes lead to technogenic stress on natural and artificial ecosystems. Ecosystems are mostly affected negatively by pollution of the air basin with dust and gas emissions. The toxic substances found in these emanations include heavy metals. Together with dust emissions, they enter the soil as the habitat of most representatives of the biota. Degradation of natural vegetation begins ever during the construction of industrial enterprises. In the future, the state of the environment will worsen. The effect of constant, even one-time dust emissions can lead to catastrophic consequences. Therefore, these forms of anthropogenic impact on the environment that positively regulate the balance of functioning components play a significant role. Next slide, please. Heavy metals are accumulated by plants in their roots and leaves. The processes of their absorption by roots and leaves are different. In the first case, the ion passes through the cell wall, and in the second, through stroma or through the cuticula of the epidermis. Together with the transport metabolites are part of the accumulated toxic substances in exported. The cuticula, the thickness and chemical compositions of which on the outer surface of the epidermal cells varies greatly depending on the type of plant, its age, systematic position, living conditions, and act. Consistence of cutting impregnated with wax and is a complex mixture of long chain alkanes, ketones, complex acids, and carboxylic acids, which is a universal adaptation of plant to environmental conditions. Next slide, please. The nature of heavy metals, migration along the trophic food chains of the animals, namely the invertebrate inhabitants of the soil and litter, and the determination of threshold loads both in individual taxa of animals and for the ecosystem as a well arouses interest. The purpose of study was to establish the future of heavy metals accumulation in various components of the ecosystems, soil, plant, animal, in the area of Pridniprovska regional thermal power plant operation. Materials and methods. Materials of plant and animal origin and soil sample were used for the research. Representatives of soil and litter invertebrates, samples of soil and sod-forming corals to determine the content of heavy metal were selected in artificial plantation of Robinia pseudoacacia located in immediate proximity to the Pridniprovska thermal power plant in Dnipro. Areas with artificial woody plantations are at a distance of 30-40 kilometers from the thermal power plant were used as a control. At the same time, the direction of the winds was taken into account. Soil samples were taken at a depth of 20 centimeters. The roots and leaves of the main regional sod-forming grass, Poa angustifolia and Elytrigia repens, was used for ecotoxicological studies. For the determination of the taxonomic composition of soil and litter invertebrates and the selection of material of animals, the ecotoxicological studies, Barbara traps were used, taking into account the functional affiliation of insects. The content of heavy metals was determined terminated only in Historida, Karabida, and Karambitsida. The statistical analysis was performed used the program Statistics 6 for Windows. Next slide, please. The determination of heavy metals content in the invertebrate animals, tissue, plant, material, and soil was carried out by the method of atomic absorption, spectrophotometry, according to the standard methods. The coefficients of biological absorption of heavy metals by the roots and leaves of the experimental plant were calculated. To detect the processes of root barrier in the experimental plant, the root barrier coefficient was calculated as the ratio of the element content in the roots to its content in the above ground organs. Next slide, please. The bioaccumulation index as the ratio of the heavy metals content in the invertebrate representatives to the heavy metals content in the objects of their nutrition or habitat was calculated. For representatives of saprophags, the ratio of trace elements in the soil habitat, and for zoophags, the trace elements content in phytophags representative Karambitsida as potential objects of their nutrition was calculated. Next slide, please. Results and discussion. In the course of experiment, different intensity of the elements accumulation by vegetative organs of different type of plants was rewarded. Those in the control area, a significant content of manganese and copper in the roots of Po angustifolia and manganese, zinc, and copper in Elytrigia repens was noted. In the experimental plants, an accumulation of manganese was observed in the substantive path for angustifolia, copper and zinc, Elytrigia repens. The leaves of zinc, copper, cadmium, and lead exceeded the reference values. Next slide, please. In this slide, we can see figure 2, the content of heavy metals in various components of ecosystems under conditions of environmental pollution for angustifolia. Next slide, please. In this figure, we can see the content of heavy metals in various components of ecosystem under conditions of environmental pollution, Elytrigia repens. Next slide, please. Along with plants, soil invertebrates are an integral part of the biota in artificial plantation of Robinia pseudoacacia in the area of Pridniprovska thermal plant station operation. It was found that in artificial planting of Robinia pseudoacacia, the population of soil and litter invertebrates is represented by crustaceans, molluscs, arachnids, and insects. They are characterized by high number species, richness, and diversity of functional groups. In all Robinia pseudoacacia plantation, the greatest taxonomic diversity is among representative of the class Insecta, Scarabidas, Staphylinida, Carabida, Sylphida, Tenebrianida, Historida, Karambitsida. In animals selected in the area of influence of the Pridniprovska thermal power plants, and in the control area, zinc content for representative of Isopoda, Carambicida, Carabida is almost the same and has the levels 18.1, 19.6 milligram kilogram. Next slide, please. In this slide, we can see average strength of heavy metal accumulation by representative of soil liter invertebrates in artificial Robinia pseudoacacia stands in area of Pridniprovskaya thermal power plant operation. Next slide, please. Accumulation of heavy metals by representative of soil and litter invertebrates occurs in the process of their nutrition. Each animal performs its ecological and geochemical functions, taking part in the cycle of trace elements. Vertebrates feed on invertebrates. In this way, toxic microelements accumulated by invertebrates enter trophic food chain. In the process of research, the feature of the heavy metals accumulation by invertebrates, which belong to such functional groups of zoophag and saprophags, were determined. The index of biological accumulation by representatives of individual taxa belonging to certain functional groups was calculated. In this figure, you can see index of biological accumulation of representative of soil and litter invertebrates in artificial Robinia pseudoacacia plantation in the area of Pridniprovskaya thermal power plant operation and its control areas. Next slide, please. Based on the conducted research, it was established peculiarities in the accumulation of heavy metals by the main salt-forming cereals, depending on the level of soil pollution, on the planting of Robinia pseudoacacia in the area of the Pridniprovskaya thermal power plant operation. It was found that in the soil of the experimental site, the content of zinc, copper, cadmium, and lead exceeded the reference indicators, and the excess was significant for manganese and nickel. The peculiarities of the heavy metals accumulation in the above ground and underground part of the main salt-forming grass growing on the thermal power plant territory was revealed. Soil litter invertebrates living in Robinia pseudoacacia plantation in the area of Pridniprovskaya thermal power plant operation and control sites accumulated heavy metals. Certain taxa of soil and litter invertebrates, Carabida, Carambicida, can be used as bioindicators for the state of the environment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lord, for your informative report. And we have some questions for you. And the first question is, Sergey Senko, you're welcome.
Tell me, please, what you know about pseudoacacia?
Could you repeat, please, your question because we
Про
couldn't hear you.
інвазійну активність робіння псевдоакацій.
Thank you for your question. May I answer for Ukraine language? Ми розуміємо, що акація висаджувалася впродовж багатьох років на території України як вид, який дуже швидко оновлює екосистеми. Техногенні екосистеми, це стосується і Криворіжжя, і Придніпров'я, степового Придніпров'я на території різних техногенних екосистем.
Ландшафтів.
Да, ландшафтів. І, відповідно, сама рабіня псевдоакація дуже адаптивний від, але вона зараз агресивно себе поводить, дуже швидко витісняє домінанти види, які складають нашу вітчизняну арбофлору. Ну і відповідно, але її, якщо не застосовувати якісь санітарні заходи, то вона як може, по-перше, вона медонос, ми розуміємо, тому підтримує зоологічний комплекс. А по-друге, вона все ж таки змінює, якщо територія не заселена, вона швидко адаптується, заселяє, особливо у нас в Криворіжжі техногенні ландшафти, такі як відвали, шламосховища там менше, але от території брошені, і потім вона, ця рослина вже займає і селективні зони, і таким чином вона наносить, становить небезпеку відносно, особливо якщо за ділянками немає догляду, санітарного догляду з боку лісництва або відповідних організацій. Дякую за запитання.
І вам дякую. Я вибачаю, ще одне запитання мене зацікавило. Пане Максиме, скажіть, будь ласка, мені відомо, що у Кривбасі, у Криворізькому ботанічному саду є цікава технологія, яка ґрунтується на використанні конденсованої вологи на відвалах без ґрунту, власне, яка утворюється через різницю температур вночі і вдень. Її засвоюють рослини, і от там якраз переважно більшість становлять дерева цього роду, є так само клени і так далі. Що ви скажете про робінню псевдоакацію у тому випадку? От що вам відомо про це?
Дякую за запитання. На жаль, я працював в ботанічному саду майже 7 років тому. У нас були 4 відділи, і цей займався окремо відділ, якщо не помиляюся, відділ мікробіології. Це окремий напрямок, це вже більш сучасні розробки. Я маю обмежену інформацію стосовно цих.
Дякую.
Так, на жаль, це я не фахівець, і ми працювали трошки в іншому напрямку. Але якщо цікаво, там є у нас електронна адреса, напишіть, то ми знайдемо інформацію. Дякую. Thank you for your attention.
Dear colleagues, we have to remind you that the language of the seminar is English. To avoid future problems with article indexing, please follow the requirements. And if you have any questions, you may ask them.
I'm sorry for my bad English. Thanks.
You could answer the question in chat, but in English. And we are moving on. And the path to sustainable development should be sought in the implementation of spatially optimized models of socio-natural interaction, according to our next speakers. We invite Serhiy Sonko and Tatiana Karpenko to present their research topic, Development of Spatial Optimization Models of Socio-Natural Interaction as the Way to Sustainable Development.
Development of spatial optimization models of socio-natural interaction as a way to sustainable development. In general, the main methodological problem of modern nature management is overcoming the contradiction between the growing consumption of natural resources and the need for further development. The main theoretical principles of solving this pressing problem are laid out in the works of Volodymyr Vernadsky and other scientists, whose work is logically reflected in the corresponding concepts of nature management. The general direction, main content, and ways of implementing the eco-network concept are based on improvement of condition, improvement of protection, and increase of funding. All these should be carried out by executive authorities within the existing administrative and territorial system. But it is precisely in the existing administrative division of the territory that uncompromising anthropocentrism in relation to nature is embodied better than anywhere. The optimization model of the spatial organization of nature use proposed by Alexander Toptiev is a logical embodiment of the considered nature protection direction in the development of such concepts. The concept of ecological safety frameworks, eco-networks, is a continuation of the good old traditions of nature protection, which were established in many natural sciences and which, however, do not change the general negative direction of nature use. The basis of the methodology is the concept of noospheric ecosystems, which are formed in the process of socio-natural interaction since the Neolithic. The basis of the methodology is a retrospective analysis of the dynamics of socio-natural systems. In the first diagram, you can see spatial dynamics of the species Homo sapiens in the age of collecting, dynamic dispersive type of mediation of geographical space. In the second diagram, you can see spatial dynamics of the species Homo sapiens at the time of the formation of agroecosystems. In the third diagram, you can see spatial dynamics of the species Homo sapiens at the time of the formation of urbo-ecosystems. And in the last diagram, you can see spatial dynamics of the human population at the beginning of the development of urbanization. On this slide, you can see the diagram of spatial dynamics of the human population at the beginning of the development of urbanization. In the next diagram, you can see spatial dynamics of the human population in the era of the formation of world cities. As we can see on the classical diagram, the spatial distortion is reflected by the change in the shape of initially regular hexagons towards a shape stretched along the main axis, describing the field of influence of a large city. Therefore, the anisotropy of the geographical space in modern times is the result of the pooling of material and energy flows and a quantitatively greater part of the entire population by large, which are gradually becoming global cities. As we can see from the diagram, the forms of nature use are located in close proximity to the centers of urbanization and play the role of scrubbers and adapters of individuals of Homo urbanicus. In addition, on this model, it is possible to spatially combine the mentioned forms of organization of noosphere existence with the objects of the eco-network. The main distinguishing feature of the author's model is that, in contrast to the modified crystallar log-izard models considered earlier, in it the greatest dispersion is carried to the periphery, in the biosphere windows according to Alexander Topчiev, which generally corresponds to the state of population dynamics observed in other species in living nature. Conclusions. Modifications of spatial connections in the author's model can be very diverse. However, the main direction of interaction between nature and society is radically changed from anthropocentric to adapted, which is the most important content of the concept of sustainable development. With this approach, the typology of the countries of the world acquires a completely different internal content. At the very least, thanks to a fundamental change in the orientations of economic development, a significant proportion of underdeveloped countries, especially those with anthropogenically unchanged ecosystems, will acquire visible prospects for further existence. The relationship between nature and society should be optimized towards a redistribution of ecological resources thanks to the construction of new spatial proportions, primarily between the areas of agro and urban ecosystems. Thank you very much.
The report is now complete. Colleagues, do you have any questions for our speakers? Okay, so we have a question. In your presentation, you state that the main methodological problem of modern environmental management is to overcome the contradiction between the growing consumption of natural resources and the need for further development. And you propose a conceptual model of socio-natural interaction. Could you tell us, please, what practical measures are required to implement the proposed model?
In our model of nature and society interaction, we proposed of new relations with with nature and society. This model based on two rotation between agro-ecosystem and urban ecosystem. Humanity during its development will aggression polexed to the nature ecosystem. This fact is to підтверджується, вибачаюсь. Підкажіть, будь ласка, підтверджується.
Підтверджується, it will be...
Can
you say it in sentence? Можете реченням сказати, будь ласка?
It's proved. Підтверджується
proved. Is proved.
The big, very big calculate of all population that we think what we humanity must return to a nature and this action must be to
To realize, maybe.
To realize so rotation between agro-ecosystem and urban ecosystem. Sorry for my English. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you a lot for your answer. We are really grateful. And the next report, prospects for using composite preparations based on silica nanosols, will be presented by Tatiana Tkachenko and Marina Akselenko. You're welcome.
Organizers and participants of the conference. I'd like to represent you the investigation of Kuhar Institute of Bioorganic Chemistry and Petrochemistry of the National Academy of Science of Ukraine deal with the using composite preparation based on silica nanosols. Preparations containing active silicon have a significant effect on plant growth and development, increasing yield, product quality, and resistance to various stresses. The field is actively developing with synthetic silicon-containing preparation being created for seed priming and foliar feeding of plants. The amorphous silica use affects the phosphorus, calcium, potassium, and magnesium absorption and accumulation by plants. It's known that amorphous silica strengthens the resistance of bread grains to various fungal disease and can be used as insecticide against the corresponding insects. Amorphous silica absorbs lipids from the cuticle of insects, leading to the rapid dehydration of their bodies. Hydrophobic silica is more effective in this regard than hydrophobic silica. The use of foliar sprays containing silicon compounds is a relatively new technique. Silicates were first used for spraying leaves in 1990, while spraying with stabilized silica acid was introduced in 2003. Recently, spraying with silica nanoparticles has also been introduced. Silicates are effective as pesticides, while spraying with stabilized silica acid has a positive effect on growth and yield, and also helps protect plants from stress. When silicon is absorbed by plants' roots from the soil solution, it reaches a maximum if only from 1 to 5% of a viability number of forms. However, when vegetable plants are sprayed with an aqueous solution of silicon, the absorption level by the leaves is from 30 to 40%. Researchers have carried out experiments to determine the most effective sources of silicon for foliar application. It has been suggested that stabilized sil acid is a promising compound for this purpose. Silicon can enhance suberization, lignification, and differentiation, resulting in improving structural stability. This is due to the binding of silica to the hemicellulose in the cell wall, which is especially useful during water deficit. Moreover, biosilification in plants involves the polymerization of silicic acid within the aploplast, which creates a barrier of amorphous silica. This barrier can help protect against both biotic and abiotic stress by preventing pathogen infection by the penetration of toxic elements. The purpose of our work was to investigate the effect of foliar spraying with silicon-containing solutions on the growth and post-stress recovery of winter wheat under conditions of simulated moderate soil drought. Silica nanoparticles were obtained using two methods: high-speed dispersion with ultrasound processing mechanical method and nanosol synthesis by hydrolysis of tetraethoxysilane. It's important to note that silica particles tend to aggregate in a liquid medium to form agglomerates. Moreover, as the particle volume decreases, the effect agglomeration becomes more pronounced due to the size effect. To estimate the size of the obtained particles, a comparative atomic force microscopy of the samples was carried out. After analyzing of atomic force microscopy data of 2 nanoparticle samples, it can be concluded that larger and more aggregate nanoparticles are formed in case of dispersion. On the other hand, nanosol obtained by the hydrolytic method is made up to smaller particles with size and order of magnitude smaller than those in the case of dispersion. These smaller particles are less aggregate and more discrete. The obtained nanosols were used to create biologically active composites with metal salts, humates, and lignohumates. Determination of the created product's anti-stress effect based on silica nanosols, a potassium silicate lignin citrate solution for foliar treatment, was carried out in a vegetable experiment with winter wheat of the kubus variety. In the vegetation experiment, soil moisture deficiency was simulated 3 times. Soil moisture was maintained at about 30% level of the total soil moisture content for 2 weeks. Based on the analysis of the result presented in table, it was found that treated plants did not differ in biomass that compared to plants' growth under favorable conditions. When modeling under regulating conditions of soil moisture deficit is at the level of 30% of the total moisture content in the tailoring phase, the experimental wheat plants' reliability different from the control ones in terms of productivity. The mass of ground part of 100 plants in the experiment had a range of 10.6 gram in the control group to 12.15 gram when using the composition with potassium dihydrogen phosphate after 3 treatments of plant with composition based on silica nanosols. Other versions of the experiment demonstrate an increase in the mass of the ground part by 10–12%. Essentially, foliar fertilization with silica-containing composition lead to a slight increase in the process of organic matter synthesis and nutrient translocation in plants, even under influence moisture in the condition of the vegetation experiment. The results of the vegetative experiments allow us to state that the created composition based on silica nanosols exhibit antioxidant properties. They ensure a decrease in the content of malonaldehyde in the leaves of plant and intermediate products of undesirable peroxide process of lipids, mainly lipids of cell membrane, which negatively affect the functioning of cell membranes and probably on growth process. The use of silica-containing compounds for foliar feeding helps to increase the activity of the photosynthetic apparatus and be reliably increasing the content of total carotenoid in the leaves. Exogenously strengthens the antioxidant system of plant, which is important for increasing the resistance of plant to stress. Thus, they increase the resistance of plants against such stress as insufficiently moisture supply. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you, colleagues, for your informative report. And dear colleagues, if you have any questions for our speakers after the presentations, please ask them in the chat or orally by raising your hand at the bottom of your screen in advance. And we have a question. In a brief summary, what is the practical significance of your research?
The practical significance of our research is that the using of our foliar protection, we could increase the productivity of plants under stress factors such as not full full water from not full moisture for plants. That's one of the most influence.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And one more question. How long did your research take?
The investigation was carried out during 2 years.
Oh, that was really a lot. Thank you. And Sergey Sanko, do you have a question?
I have a little question. Tell me, please, what you know about the role of silicon on the creation of the life in our planet? If I know the main chemical element for life creation is a carbon. So the role of silicon on the creation life on our planet.
Нет, як ми назвали утворення життя на нашій планеті, бо в нас утворення. The silicon have a very important influence in the biological process in plants especially. It helps to make the wall of cell more strong. It helps to it increases the resistance of plants to less humidity and
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am satisfied.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And the last question. Did you face any difficulties during your research?
We have some problem in the creation of the form of our foliar protection, and as most of us in our country, we have some problem with the light. It's one of the important factor for our investigation when it and we did it in the laboratory. And nowadays we make these preparates during our original technology.
Thank you a lot for your answers and thank you for your questions. And we are moving on. Our next speakers invite us to talk about the conservation of forest resources. So, we invite Arkady Sedov to speak on the topic Geospatial Database Generation of Forest Growths using the QGIS software package. You're welcome.
Congratulations for all participants of this conference. The topic of our research work is geospatial database generation of forest growth using the QGIS software package. The article discusses the use of machine learning methods in the QGIS software package to create a geographic information database of forest growth. The authors explore the possibilities of applying machine learning algorithms to analyze satellite images of different resolutions and geospatial data to determine the growth of forest resources. The use of machine learning algorithms to analyze satellite images and geospatial data is the context of determining forest growth is proven to be a very effective and promising area of research. Here are some of the possibilities of advantages to the approach. First, forest cover classification, detecting changes in forest cover, forest growth forecasting, data analysis, automation, improved accuracy and the speed of analysis, formation of geodatabase, and others. The study was conducted on the territory of the Slobozhansky National Nature Park, which located in Kharkiv region near the town Krasnokutsk. The data is presented in vector form using the QGIS software. This slide shows that the territory of the national park has a variegated structure, which makes it difficult to identify forest cover. According to the data, the park is divided into 127 quarters, and for experiment we selected information about one quarter, which is shown at the next slide. We downloaded 3 high-resolution satellite images from open sources for different years and months. This will be allow to identify the time period most suitable for recognizing tree species. As you can see from this slide, the satellite images differ, and this is especially evident in the image of April 2019, when the trees are still without leaves. The exact tree species in the park is indicated in the semantic information from the vector layer of the database. For this quarter, this slide shows the following tree species: Scots pine, red sand areas, common oak, blue areas, and hanging birch, green areas. The next stage of the study is to perform machine learning to recognize different breeds using the QGIS Orfeo toolbox provided plugin. Machine learning is a field of artificial intelligence that use statistical technologies to give computer systems the ability to learn from data without being explicitly programmed. These tree software products allow you to apply methods such as boost classifier, decision tree classifier, normal base classifier, random forest classifier, KNN classifier, Shark random forest classifier, and Shark means classifier. The KNN, key nearest neighbors method proved to be the most effective. The algorithm caches all training samples and predicts the response for a new sample by analyzing a certain number of the sample nearest neighbors using voting, calculating, etc. This method is sometimes referred to as learning by example because it looks for a feature vector which a known response that is close to the give vector for prediction. An example of comparing the results of the k nearest neighbors machine learning method with the Shark means classifier method can be seen at the slide. The same satellite image was used and same training domain was used too. This slide shows that k nearest neighbor allows used to obtain us to obtain a qualification result much better than from the same satellite images using other methods. If we compare different images classification by the same method, we can see that the season of image acquisition is very important. At the slide, we can see that the classification results for Q1, as it is seen from the slide, the date of image acquisition affects the efficiency of image interpretation. Depending on the type of tree species, the date of image acquisition should be selected. The information obtained should then be recorded in a single database, and GIS software allows to combine and analyze different types of spatial data from different sources. Not only does the resolution and the time of acquisition seasons affect the quality of the classification, but also the amount and type of training the software receives to classify the image. Three different approaches on the same image and using the same methods can be seen in the slide. Image classification is highly dependent on the selection of samples for machine learning, as it is seen from the slide. The same fragments can be classified with different efficiency. Conclusions. The use of machine learning to classify satellite images of forest resources allows to create maintain up-to-date database. Among a wide range of machine learning methods, you need to choose the one that will be most effective for identifying certain tree species. A combination of different methods may be used. Satellite imagery should correspond to the period when different tree species are very distinct and not blend into the background. It is necessary to take into account that trees look different in different seasons. Biological features of the vegetation cover should be taken into account. Another condition for effective forest classification is selection of the data amount to create a classification model. There are no universal recommendation for this task. It is necessary to select an effective option in terms of area and fine contours by gradual approximation. The use of artificial intelligence in the form of machine learning allows the classification of satellite data, thereby ensuring the functioning of forest database. Those artificial intelligence in geographic information system has great potential for solving complex tasks of analyzing and processing geospatial data. At the same time, for the successful application of these technologies, it is necessary to address the issues of security, confidentiality, and data availability. Taking these aspects into account, artificial intelligence in GIS can become a powerful tool for the development of various industries that use geospatial data. Thank you for your attention.
We thank the speakers for their engaging presentations, and we are ready to ask a few questions. Colleagues, do you have any questions? Sergey Sinko, you're welcome.
I have a little question. Arkady, tell me please, what the main significance of your methodology for forest resource exploitation and biodiversity investigation? Перекладу українською. Як ви вважаєте, ваша методологія більш ефективно спрацює для дослідження лісових ресурсів чи для дослідження біорізноманіття?
Are you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, thank you. I understand your question, and we chose forest resources because it is have different kinds of trees, and it's easy to discover. And we have some vector data with trees which grows on this territory. If for bio differently, it is so hardly, because for this research we must use very high resolution images which we can отримати from unmanned aerial vehicle.
Thank you very much. Two questions. What you know about the system of the field map, Ukrainian Czech project of Vysotsky Forest Scientific Institute, and what your methodic different from this?
We used the machine learning and testing the possibilities of this plugin in our research.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you a lot for your questions and for your answers. And we had some questions in chat, so let me read the questions and the answers. The first question was, why did you use QGIS to map the results of the study? And the answer is, we used this software because of its availability, free of charge, and a wide variety of useful plugins that are constantly being developed. The second question was to specify what satellite imagery you used, like what the mission it was, Sentinel-1, 2, MODIS, or Landsat, etc. And the answer is, at this stage of our research, we used high-resolution images, such as Google Sat, Bing S-ray imagery. Sentinel and others are not not have the necessary permission. And we dream that in the nearest future, we will be able to use UAVs for our research. And we have one more question in chat that is still without answer. What are the advantages of QGIS?
No, the answer of this question will be in first question in chat that I mean that no.
So this question is almost the same as the first one. Thank you a lot for your answers, and we can move to the next speakers. So we invite you to talk again about ensuring that transition to rational consumption and production models. The following report is extremely relevant because it raises the issue of reconstructing our country's energy efficiency during the war. So the floor is now given to Lydia Davibida to make her presentation, Geoinformation Assessment of Solar Plant Potential in the Ivano-Frankivsk region to achieve effective decarbonization and energy stability.
Hello, dear colleagues. My name is Lydia Davibida, and it's my pleasure to present to your esteemed attention the results of our research, Geoinformation Assessment of Solar Plant Potential in the Ivano-Frankivsk region to achieve effective decarbonization and energy stability. Despite the ongoing hostilities in Ukraine, the country has begun its recovery process. The renovation should be in line with the principle of energy efficiency and decarbonization, with an emphasis on renewable energy sources. The study aims to identify the most suitable locations for establishing solar power stations within the Ivano-Frankivsk region using GIS software. Ukraine has lost near 70% of its energy generation because of Russian actions, according to the Razumkov Center's data. Losses are characteristic of both infrastructure using traditional energy sources and alternative sources, particularly photovoltaics. More than 550 megawatts of solar farms and domestic solar power plants were damaged or destroyed. The eastern and southern regions of Ukraine, which have the highest solar potential, suffered the greatest losses. In contrast, the western regions have lower solar potential due to geographical factors. Therefore, it is crucial to plan and allocate suitable sites for solar plants within western part of Ukraine. Moreover, it is important to realize that the Russian aggression has caused not only significant destruction and damage to energy infrastructure, but also environmental damage that can be described as ecocide. These environmental impacts include change in the quality of the air over the territory of Ukraine. For example, methane pollution that significantly contributes to the greenhouse effect is increasing in Ukraine and particularly in study region, as confirmed by the results of satellite monitoring. Ivano-Frankivsk region is an energy deficit region. Electricity production of solar energy facilities accounts for 1.3% of the total amount of electricity produced in the region. This volume covers near 10% of the energy consumption by the region's population. The main disadvantage of using solar energy is its low concentration, which leads to significant dimensions of solar collectors and batteries. This, in turn, leads to a significant land capacity, which significantly exceeds the performance of traditional fuel energy conversion units. The use of GIS for the development of solar projects for the analysis of the potential of territories greatly simplifies decision-making in the field of energy management and also allows optimizing the selection of the location for solar installation in the most favorable areas. An analysis of publication focused on the decision and optimization of solar systems allows the identification two main approaches that are determined by the scale of research. Ground mounted installation or solar plants within a country or a region are considered on the micro-scale level, whereas solar panel installations on building roofs within a city, district, or individual object are considered on the micro-scale level. The following types of vector and raster data were downloaded from the open sources to assess the suitability of the areas for optimal placement of solar plants within the studied region. The collection of basic digital maps, for example, insolation, slope, average temperature, forest and protected area, buildings, hydrology, power lines, and roads, which are significant factors for solar installation decision, were created. All downloaded data were processed and prepared for analysis by following steps. First of all, it was transformation to the single coordinate system. Next is clipping of vector and raster layers with the region border. Next was creation of buffer zones, for example, residential areas and buildings. It was buffer zones on 250 meters, for hydrology objects 100 meters, etc. All of them were established according to the criteria of Ukrainian law. And next was transformation from vector data to raster data and also overlay analysis. The criteria used in this study are classified into three groups: economic, environmental, and technical. Table contains all necessary information about the requirements and restrictions for the construction of solar power plants according to Ukrainian law and taking into account profitability of solar plants. Obviously, the higher amount of solar radiation, the more electricity can be generated by solar panels. Generally, solar power plants are profitable with a solar radiation value of 1,100 kilowatt hours on square meter per year. It should be noted that each of all raster layers with information about irradiance, slope, distance to the power lines, temperature, etc. has its own units, so it must be scaled to one system for unification. The process of converting data into such numeric scale is called standardization. In this case, all criteria were standardized before weighting to a common numerical range using the most commonly used linear scaling between the minimum and maximum values of all the criteria. The algorithm of Boolean logic converts the input information from each raster map to binary, from 0 to 1, or true or false. Therefore, the restricted areas were not suitable at all and were assigned with a value of 0, while other areas were assigned with value 1. The suitable areas obtained by multiplying of corresponding Boolean maps should be estimated using raster layers and AHP-evaluated maps. The final map can be calculated by following formula from the slide. The result model was grouped into 5 categories of suitability: not suitable at all, low suitability, moderate suitability, high suitability, and the most suitable areas, with an equal interval classification method. The photovoltaic potential of the territories was estimated based on expected land capacity of 0.004 hectare per kilowatt. Using zonal statistical method, the photovoltaic potential was calculated and the territorial communities were categorized into 6 groups. The communities with the lowest potential have a high level of urbanization or are located in mountainous areas. Obviously, for these communities, it is worth considering the possibility of installing solar panels on individual buildings. To sum up mentioned above, the results of the study can be used to determine the best location of the solar farm and can help accelerate the growth of electricity generation coming from renewable solar energy in Ivano-Frankivsk region. This study didn't consider small photovoltaic installation, which can be placed in private estates on the roofs of buildings. The creation of assessment models of solar potential at different scale will make it possible to create cadastres of solar potential in the future to improve land management in the region. So, thank you very much for your attention.
The report is now complete. Colleagues, do you have any questions for our speakers? We have one question in chat and one more question, and they are quite similar, so we will ask them both. The issue of energy independence is extremely relevant and painful. Much of its energy infrastructure has been damaged during the war, and it is very difficult to restore the destroyed infrastructure. Do you think that solar power plants will play a leading role among alternative energy sources in the near future or not? And do you think that the future electricity industry of Ukraine can develop exclusively at the expense of alternative sources?
Thank you very much for your attention and for your interest. And what about these questions? I can say that, in my opinion, the part of alternative source will arise in the nearest future in Ukraine because we don't have any choice. And alternative source, especially solar power, is a key factor for energy stability as well as for environmental protection. It is the way to come to lowest emission of different greenhouse effect gas. Yes, and what about solar? About solar plants, it is one of the most significant recommendation of different European committees to expand these objects in western part in Ukraine, where war impact is lower. And of course, solar plants the solar plant are the most significant and the most effective way to create more stable energy systems. And for example, when we have very unfortunately we have power outage period in our region, due to the solar power using, we have more soft schedule of power outage. So it's very significant source of energy.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And I think we have one more question. Sergey Senko? Yes, you're welcome.
I see to your presentation in last slides the correlation between exposition of mountain, Carpathian Mountain, so north-east exposition and energy potential of solar energy. Is this true?
Yeah. This slopes with northwest exposition has the less solar potential due to the orientation, and also this territory has a high level of slope, and it is not effective to use this territory for planning some big solar farms or solar plant. And for such kinds of community, it would be recommended to develop some individual solar station on the roof of building or on the facades.
So in last years, cover of forest of northeast exposition of Carpathian Mountain is increased. Is influenced to energy potential.
In this research, I don't detail investigate these questions. Because all forest region which we have in the data sets from geodesy and cartography institutes of Ukraine was excluded from the analysis. So this territory was assessed with zero weight coefficients, and they were excluded from the model assessment because the territory with forest cover are not considered as a potential at the regional scale as potentially used for solar plant building.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your interest.
Thank you a lot for your questions and for your answers. And we are going on. And the next presentation we would like to offer for discussion is no less interesting than the previous ones, because Daria Arzyantseva and Tatiana Samaricheva will present a concession as a tool for improving the budget and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of the tourist complex.
Dear colleagues, let me introduce an article written by associate professors of Khmelnytsky University of Management and Law, named after Leonid Yuskov. Concession as a tool for improving the budget and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of the tourist complex in Ukraine. In the article, the argumentation of the use of concession of historical and architectural objects in Ukraine as a tool for improving the budget and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of the tourist complex has been carried out. Today, the problem of preserving the historical and architectural component of the tourism industry has arisen quite sharply in Ukraine. Since having a rich tourist potential, the Ukrainian economy not only does not use it the full, while not maintain revenues from tourist flows, moreover, objects of historical and architectural heritage every day waiting for financing and repairs are destroyed and lose tourist attractiveness and often simply disappear from the tourist map of Ukraine. Analysis of possible sources of investment in tourist facilities showed that the most optimal is the development of public-private partnership in the tourism sector, namely the concession agreement, which is popular both in Ukraine and abroad. Restoration of abandoned architectural monuments by private investors has a widespread and successful folk practice. For example, the Château de Chantilly, France, owned by the Institut de France under the terms of the concession, is at the disposal of billionaire and philanthropist Karim Eja Khan IV and is open to tourist flows, international events and world championships. Similarly, the royal castle of Chinonce has been privately owned by the Menier family of entrepreneurs since the late 19th century, but is open to the public. The experience of Great Britain, the Czech Republic, and neighboring Poland demonstrates that the concession and the leasing of monuments are perceived and popularized. There are dozens of Polish examples where the castle used as a hotel, museum, nature reserve, and restaurant. In the Czech Republic, in addition to the concession of Konopist, Karlstein, Miroshnik, Sternberg castles, there is also an experience of selling castles into private hands, while historical palaces, forts, and castles were sold at quite reasonable prices. The main examples of public-private partnership in Italy include the wing of the Royal Villa in Monza, which is currently under concession to a private firm. The 16th century Villa del Bene, located in Dolce, Verona province, is now managed by the Regional Directorate of Museums in cooperation with the local agency Pro Loco, local promotion agency. It has become a museum, educational center, contemporary art gallery, and a venue for conference and weddings. Acquisition of the castle of Pegine, Trento province, by the Castle Pegine Foundation through public underwriting. In turn, it is impossible to ignore the fact that in Ukraine, for a quite long time, they were extremely cautious about such concession agreements, fearing that the object of national importance would be privately owned. However, in condition when since 2008, funding for castles from the state budget is particularly not allocated, the question is not in whose ownership the object will be, but how they preserve it in general. Unfortunately, the collapse of the tower at Chernogorodsky Castle in 2013, the gate tower of the unique fortification and hydraulic structure of the Polish Gate, 2009, the new West Tower on the territory of the Kamenets Historical and Architectural Reserve, 2011, indicate that time is running out to find an investor. Let us consider in more detail the concession of historical and architectural objects and its advantages in comparison with other forms of management. However, along with the advantages, the concession also has a number of disadvantages that must be taken into account when looking for potential investors. A scientific approach to budgetary and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of tourist facilities has been formed using an optimization model for calculating concession payments, which ensures that the flexibility of incentives takes into account the interests of investors based on indicators for assessing the effectiveness of an investment project with a simultaneous focus on maximizing budget revenues. It is substantiation that the budgetary and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of tourist complexes through the introduction of public-private partnership in the form of concession of historical and architectural objects will allow private business to invest in attractive tourist sites and ensure a higher profitability of the hotel and restaurant business, since the interests of the investor are taken into account, and will also reduce budget expenditures and increase tax revenues to the budgets from servicing tourist flows. The analysis of search for alternative options for budgetary and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of historical and architectural objects is their transfer to concession. The most optimal form of the concession agreement for tourist facilities is determined by the ROT, Rehabilitate, Operate, Transfer. However, the current methods of calculating concession payments allow possible neglect of the interests of the state or the investor. The application of the optimization model for determining concession payments to strengthen the budget and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of historical and architectural objects and proposed. Approbation of the optimization model at the historical and architectural site of Kamens-Podilsky showed budgetary and tax effects of near 5 or 8 million hryvnias, respectively, and a social effect which confirms the need for its use. Along with this, further research and testing are needed to improve the legal regulation of the concession agreement and the mechanism for its implementation in the area under study to guarantee the fulfillment of financial obligation by the investor and to expand the instruments of state participation in public-private partnerships in order to stimulate the investment attractiveness of the tourism industry. Thank you very much for attention.
We thank the speakers for their insightful presentation. And dear colleagues, if you have any questions for our speakers, you can ask them in the chat or orally by raising your hand at the bottom of your screen in advance.
I have a question.
Pavlo Ijevsky, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good day. This is very interesting topic. Please tell us whether you have considered the possibility of using a concession for the post-war reconstruction of historical and architectural object destroyed as a result of military operation. If so, on what terms?
Thank you for your question. Yes, you have raised a really important and painful issue. In the course of our research, we did consider the problem of extensive destruction of architectural objects as a result of hostilities. As of 2023, we have already recorded large-scale damage of destruction. These are more than 200 architectural monuments, about the same number of historical monuments. Of these, about 10% are completely destroyed, while others have suffered significant damage. We did not describe these problems in this study because we are only trying to collect material. However, the full picture of damage to historical sites will only the war is over. Occupied territories are liberated. Estimate that the number of such sites of national and local importance may already exceed 1,000. And a concession is an excellent option to solve the problem of their restoration. Firstly, when the hostilities and the funds will be used to rebuild power, roads, industrial facilities, schools, residence buildings, it will be extremely difficult to attract investment to rebuild castles and museums. After all, under the influence of participants, these ancient buildings can be completely destroyed in one winter season. Therefore, it is obvious that the terms of the concession in this situation should be as favorable as possible for the investor and take into account a quick payback. This requires a calculation the amount of investment incentives. This is the subject of a separate, very serious study. The authors and I hope to start this work as soon as we full information about the actual situation. At the moment, we can only predict that the concession should be reduced in proportion to the extent of the damage. And it should take into account the possibility of preserving such an object or the need for immediate restoration so that it's not completely destroyed. This is no longer about local government revenue, but about preserving our history now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your answer and for your question.
Thank you.
And we have one more question. Could you name, please, the attractive features of historical and architectural objects that will contribute to the investment attractiveness of the tourist complex? But like in one sentence, so just short.
Would you repeat the question? Because we have some technical problems here.
So name, please, the attractive features of historical and architectural objects that will contribute to the investment attractiveness.
We need one second. Yes. Ukraine has a great tourist potential. It is necessary to form the attractiveness of our region in particular. So the less working force in Ukraine. So our people from Ukraine receive lower salaries for their efforts, and we have many sites which were not attracted by the investors of foreign investors and of domestic investors. So this is one of the most important features which can be outlined here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. And we are proceeding with the topic of using GIS technologies for mapping physical, geographical, and socio-geographical phenomena and processes. And the next speaker, Nazar Vanyo, will present a report on the topic Geoinformation Modeling of the Geoecological State of the Floodplain Channel Complex of Rivers on the territory of the Turka city community of the Lviv region. You're welcome.
Modeling of the geological state of the floodplain channel complex of rivers on the territory of Turka city community of the Lviv region. Topic actuality. The article emphasizes the relevance of the scientific task of analyzing the geological state of water bodies at the regional and local level to optimize water use and protection of water resources. In the context of Ukrainian water strategy up to 2015 and the opportunities provided by the administrative reform of 2020 for local communities to manage national resources, the Argan scientific task of the analysis of the geological state of water body at regional and local level and the create to appropriate geoinformation data basis for water protection strategy development and assessment of territory investment attractiveness. The object of the study is the territory of the Turkivska urban communities. The subject is the research of the geological state of surface water bodies, particularly river basin system within the territory of the Turka city community in the Lviv region, Ukraine. The purpose of the article is to conduct geo-environmental research using GIS technologies to assess the state of river basin system at the level of a particular community in order to optimize water use and protect water resources. The main task is to conduct geological study using GIS technologies to assess the state of river basin system at the level and individual community in order to optimize water use and water protection. Geoinformation modeling of the geo-environmental state of the community territory involves the following research stage. It's a collection of exciting information, it's processing, conduction on research, for example, field geoinformation, laboratory and other methods, generalization of the collected geo-environmental information and forming of general conclusion. Geographical location is administrative center of the city of Turka. The area of the community is 398.8 square kilometers. The population is 23.6 thousand people. The population density is 59.17 people square kilometer. Geographical location of the Turkiv city community within the Samber district of the Lviv region and adjacent territories. The average density of water course is 2.21 km per square kilometer. The data are obtained on the basis of GIS analysis of the river network. This indicator range from 0.04 to 6.64 km per square kilometer and is characterized as height, see figure on screen. The highest density of watercourse is concentrated near the village of Vovcha and the headwaters of the Dniester River. In the village of Shimech, where the Zvir River flows into the Litmy River, and the village of Ilnik near the mouth of the Zavatka River, in the village of Yavora, the confluence of the Yavirka River with the Stry River, in the catchment area of Kindrativka River near the village of Kindrativ and Yasenesil. Accordingly, the lowest value of the density of watercourse were determined as the community boundary. The study of the state of the floodplain channel complex within the territory of the Turka community was carried out in three standard stages. The first is preparatory, next is the field surveys, and the last office processing of the collected materials by summarizing the result of the assessment of the geological state of the river according to the test performed. At the preparatory stage, the following was developed. The roads for field surveys of the state of rivers and their floodplain channel complexes were developed on the basis of cartography studies. The key areas of riverbeds and floodplain were selected as priority for detailed research. Evolution forms, see figure in screen, and forms of reporting materials are formed. Measuring equipment, pre-calibrated, and other inventory has been selected. In a field survey stage, departure to the study area, inspection of the floodplain channel complex of river when moving along its banks. Along the main route, at key points, the states of the channel and floodplain were described and their scores were given in accordance with the described methodology. A survey of local residents about change in the state of the riverbed and floodplain was carried out, and estimates in the form of before, after were recorded. Point and diffuse source of environment pollution were linked and fixed on the map. Photographic and mapping of the study area was carried out. Water quality was assessed by organoleptic indicators. Search for sites or intermediate points for additional studies was carried out. The total number of key points where we measured the main parameters and mapped the territory is 120 points. Based on calculation using methodology, the average score is 172.65, indicating a general condition of the river as still good but with potential degradation processes. This highlights the need for preventive measures to protect and preserve rivers, particularly through education and information initiatives. Approximately 42.5% of the floodplain channel complex, mainly in the valleys of the Dniester and Stry, is rated as satisfactory, requiring water protection measures for recovery. Additionally, sections with a score exceeding 2030 is 11% are considered good, necessitating limit preventive measures such as managing coastal zones and preventive regulation of flow and construction within floodplain. About their conclusion, utilizing modern GIS technologies and detailed field surveys provides an essential information base for crafting an environment action plan aimed at conserving water bodies locally. Within the Turco community, only half of the study river basin system are rated as good or still good, predominantly comprising small water courses, while approximately 7% are deemed unsatisfactory or in extremely serious condition. The obtained cartography materials emphasize the necessity for effective management decision to optimize natural management within basin and floodplain channel system and to regulate water use and protection. Maintaining the functionality of coastal protection zone is crucial for reducing the load on channel complexes by prohibiting various activities such as plowing, gardening, construction, waste disposal, and vehicle maintenance. Thanks for attention.
Thank you for your presentation. Colleagues, we remind you that if you have any questions for our speakers, you can ask them in the chat or orally by raising your hand at the bottom of your screen in advance. And we have a question. What is the practical significance of your research?
The practical research, in our opinions, is a strategy Ukrainian of water resource to save this water. We must doing monitoring water because water is the main resource for people. We must to protect water, and that resource is very strategy for now.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And we have a question in chat from Olena Yeromenko. And the question is, in your research, you have listed various map editors. For what purpose?
We use it in our research various map for illustrated the situation in study area. We use the map to show the map editors to RGIS Pro and QGIS. So.
Okay, thank you. And maybe the last question for you. What difficulties did you face during your research?
For the difficult, we got the 2 point where we see the status when in territory in extremely serious condition. We observe the worst situation in area near the large population center. For example, it's town of Turka. This is pollution from economic activities that doesn't have for something treatment plant and savage of engineering facility and cattle grazing near the valley of the rivers. So we must have the monitoring device for this territory and all Ukraine, because it's very need for up the strategy water protect of Ukraine.
Thank you a lot for your answer. And we are moving on. And we would like to invite Boris Onyshchenko and Fedoskina Olena to speak and present experimental research of time for opening and closing of spray inlet and injector nozzles. And before we start the video, we would ask you to write your questions in chat because of a poor internet connection of the authors. So they will answer you in chat. Thank you.
My name is Boris Onyshchenko. I am Associate Professor of Department of Agriculture Machinery and System Technologies, named Academic Vasilenko in National University of Life and Environmental Science of Ukraine. The thematics of my articles with co-author Volodymyr Onyshchenko and Volodymyr Nazarenko is experimental research of time for opening and closing of spray inlet and injectors nozzles. We know that the chemical protection is very important to have a good yield. Because we have a significant variety of soil, climatic condition, meteorologic factors, and another factors, a lot of weeds, a lot of disease, and if we, for example, have a good, if we don't have, for example, pesticide protection, we could lose around 80% of yield. If we don't have protection, chemical protection from the disease, we could lose around 30% of yield. That's why it's very important to have a good chemical protection and a good machine for this. The main factors in efficiency of meteorological in the yield, it's meteorological factors: wind speed, humidity, and temperature. Why? Because when we have a spraying, main materials or main instrument for chemical protection, yes, main process of chemical protection, we have creation of drops. And these drops is very sensitive to wind speed because if temperature of wind and the humidity of wind. And that's why for good efficiency chemical protection, we should have drops around 400, 500 microns, and at least 100 drops per square centimeters. And we know the characteristic of nozzles. Yes, flat injection nozzle, different manufacturers, what they have. But question that I studied, it's what will be in transition period? For example, if I want to have one nozzle for one speed of wind, another nozzle for another speed of wind, because, for example, injection nozzle have a good characteristic of drift. So I mean the minimum drift, because the size of drops is around 400, 500 microns, and we have minimum of drift. The flat type of nozzles have a good coverage, around 400, 300 drops per square centimeters, but they have bad drift. And we created the special combined working organ with two types of nozzles. And we need to know what will be in transition period. How much time we need for start one nozzle, and how much time we need to close another nozzle. So we need to create the schematic how we could work with two nozzles. What will be the transition period? What will be the overlapping? When we need to start one nozzle, finished another, and maybe finished another, start and first nozzle. So we need to make research on this. So first, what was done, it was literature research. What we have. So I checked the international researchers and the Ukrainian authors. So so I checked the base of Scopus, and what I have on sprayer nozzle studies. So for example, Hater, Mercadi, they studied the flow and pressure regulation of agricultural sprayers using solenoid valves. Geoffrey, Lubert, they studied the compressive model of pesticide spray drift. So yeah, something we have. Luke and Pitla, they have studied flow, spray pattern, and droplet spectral characteristics. Yeah, but there is no answers what will be in the transitional period. What will be in the start when we have zero and the main characteristic. Yeah, what will be before zero? Martinez and other authors have studied the effect of nozzle type and pressure on spray droplet characteristic. So yes, but it's usually they usually have studied when the sprayer is in the working position. I need to know what will be before working position. Yes, we took and other authors, they have just analyzed machine for protection sprayers, but what will be in the transition period, no information. Polishuk have studied the substation and parameters of hemorrhagic system for dosing and supply of working liquid. Baranovsky, Sergeyeva have studied the jet pump. So all these authors have, yeah, they have studied the sprayers, they have studied the nozzles, but what will be in the start and what will in the end, what should be the transition period between one nozzle to another, no information. no studies. So we decided to make this researches, experimental researches, with two nozzles, main two nozzles, injection and flat type nozzles, and we decided how much time we need for opening and closing each nozzles, because we need to know what will be in the working position when we change nozzles in the working, no, in the stop position, in the working position. That's why we made these researches. This researches was made on the National University of Life and Environmental Science in the Department of Agriculture and Machinery. So we put the camera on the tripod and make filming the start and stop of the nozzles, the start and stop of the spraying of the nozzles, because camera have 25 frames per second. What we see, for example, the interval is 0.4 second. This is Lechler, the flat nozzle from Lechler as test 110.02. So you can see how it starts. For example, you need around 2 seconds, 0.04 seconds for opening. Yes, so it's not just. So you need some time for opening one nozzle and time for opening another nozzle. And what we see, for example, this is the 11 experimental research that we made for opening time Lechler ID injection nozzle. So you see, sometimes we have 0.46 second, sometimes 0.45 for 56 seconds. So less than second we need for opening injection nozzles. For flat nozzles, it's look like a quarter of second. So when we change from one nozzle to another nozzle, we need to have some overlapping, because we don't need the area without spraying, because it's very, very bad and you have disease and another problem in this area. For example, for checking the opening time for flat nozzle, we have made around 8 experimental. And what we can see, for opening time for opening for flat nozzle from Lechler, we need average around 0.235 second, which coefficient of variation is 19.17, and for opening the injection nozzle, we need around 2 times more, 0.435 second, with variation coefficient 15.45. Closing of this nozzle is very fast, 0.08 second. So we need some time for overlapping, because we don't need the area without spraying, because we could lose the yield in this area, and it's very, very bad. Why we need to change the nozzle? Why we do this? Because injection nozzle have a good drops, very big drops. 400, 500 microns. And this type of nozzle is perfect work with big wind speed, around 5-6 kilometers per hour. Flat nozzle have a good coverage. They have 200-300 drops per square centimeters, but they have bad work in the wind speed more than 3 kilometers per hour. So it's idea to change the type of the nozzle when the sprayer is working. In this idea, we could have good coverage when the wind speed is small, and when the wind speed is bigger than 3 kilometers per hour, we could use the injection nozzle, and this nozzle very good with drift, small drift, and a good efficiency. So we have found the time for opening and close each nozzle, and we calculated, for example, for the transition time for switching from the flat nozzle to injection nozzle should be around 0.395 seconds, and transition time switch from injection nozzle to the flat nozzle should be 0.155 seconds. So this means that we should start another one nozzle before the finished another nozzle. Yes, so it should be some overlapping in time to have a good coverage, because in another case we have a problem, we have not coverage zones, and we lose the yield. Thank you for attention. Waiting for questions.
Thank you a lot for presenting the results of your research. And we have 2 questions in chat, so I will read them. The first question was, what experimental conditions are necessary to study the opening and closing time of the nozzles? And the answer is wind speed up to 5 meters per second, temperature up to 26 Celsius degrees, humidity should be more than 60%, and the transition period of work, not standard period when we have start and finish. And one more question was, what is the novelty of your research? And the answer was very concise too. So time for opening and closing of the nozzles. And if you want to find out like more open question, you can read this article when it will be published. And we are going on. And the next presentation will be by Fedoskina Olena, who will present us a study on the topic gypsum recycling using an inclined chamber vibrating jaw crusher.
Gypsum recycling using an inclined chamber vibrating jaw crusher. There are almost 160,000 buildings and structures in Ukraine that were destroyed due to Russian aggression and need to be restored and repaired. Hundreds of thousands of tons of construction waste generated as a result of the destruction of buildings contain valuable secondary resources. Metal, concrete, glass and bricks, etc. Broken concrete, bricks, tiles, glass, elements of wood, plastic, gypsum, scrap metals, ferrous and non-ferrous, bituminous mixtures and resins, stones, insulating materials, chemical substances, packaging materials. This includes gypsum waste, most of which is gypsum drywall. Gypsum waste, harmless in its isolated state. When disposed of in a landfill, causes environmental problems by polluting groundwater, emitting hydrogen sulfide and greenhouse gases. Landfill disposal is the easiest and lowest level of waste disposal, causing significant environmental damage. Gypsum is one of the materials widely used in construction along with cement. This natural material is also used in many industries and agriculture. In Ukraine, the Donetsk Basin has the largest reserves and production of gypsum and anhydrite. A significant portion of the explored deposits are located in the Bakhmut district. A large number of enterprises are located in the Luhansk region and Crimea. Since all these enterprises are in temporarily occupied territory or the war zone, the main production of gypsum has shifted to Prikapatia. The decrease in production can be partially offset by recycling industrial and construction waste gypsum materials. One such material is gypsum board, which uses over 80% of the extracted gypsum in its production. Gypsum drywall, a key component in most modern buildings, is made by sandwiching a dense gypsum core between two layers of specially treated paper, cardboard. The composition of a typical drywall board is roughly 93% gypsum, 6% paper facings, 1% moisture, starches, and organic surfactants. Millions, or even tens of millions of tons of gypsum waste are generated globally each year. The primary sources of this waste include production waste, rejects and substandard gypsum products, construction waste, scraps generated during drywall assembly, demolition and renovation waste, drywall removed from buildings, which may have higher contamination levels. The main processing tasks are the separation of the cardboard shell and the shredding of the gypsum core. Currently existing technologies of gypsum board processing do not have any noticeable differences. Technological schemes provide for the conversion of the entire mass of gypsum board into a fine-grained product and further separation in a drum separator into gypsum component and paper. The disc shredder of Turkish company Paje Makina is widely used, and the separator is made in the form of a cylindrical chamber with an internal rod, shaft and perforated bottom part of the chamber. The general disadvantage of the currently used crushing and shredding equipment is the processing of gypsum board into a mixed fine-grained product, which significantly complicates the qualitative separation of components. The physical picture of gypsum drywall fracture by a single impact with different shape of the impactor surface was determined on the developed laboratory impact tester. The tester includes a pendulum, a suspension axis, a bearing assembly of a replaceable weight and an impactor. The centers of mass of the weight and the impactor are located on a common vertical axis distant from the pendulum suspension axis at a distance of 1 meter. Mounting of the impactor allows to set a different profile of the working surface interacting with the material under study. The height of the impactor lifting, dropping, is determined by the measuring system containing a curvilinear bar rigidly connected with the pendulum suspension axis and a tracking mechanism. The mechanism is made in the form of a cylinder with a piston and a pressure spring inside. This system also makes it possible to track the character of interaction of the impactor with the material under study. For the same purpose, An acceleration sensor is attached to the impactor assembly to record changes in acceleration in the vertical plane. The smooth surface of the impactor produced no visible damage to the gypsum board sample. The pyramidal surface completely separates the upper shell of the gypsum board while keeping the gypsum core intact. The prismatic profile tears the upper shell and compacts the gypsum core. The best result is obtained with the oval profile of the striker surface. In essence, the top shell is removed without much damage and the gypsum core is extensively fractured. This profile of the liner surface was adopted for installation on the vibrating jaw crusher for further research. Crushing was performed on a laboratory sample of vibrating jaw crusher. The crusher includes a passive, lower, crushing jaw 1. Mounted on elastic elements 5 and simultaneously acting as a body. The active jaw 3 is mounted in the passive jaw stance by means of a suspension axis 2, against which it can make rotary oscillations. Jaw vibrations are generated by a twin-shaft inertial vibration exciter 4. The material is crushed in the crushing chamber formed by the working surfaces of the passive 1 and active 2 jaws. Strips of 12, 5 mm thick and 130 mm wide NAF blue drywall, identical to those studied on the impact tester, were subjected to crushing, based on the studies on the impact tester. The lining surface of the active jaw is made by a set of oval rods. On the inner side of the unbroken cardboard plates there is an insignificant residual gypsum deposit, and the gypsum core has a sufficiently high degree of crushing. Thus, the original composite material is divided into 3 constituent parts, which are already secondary raw materials. The resulting shape of the crushed product allows for a fairly simple separation on the screening surface. The fraction 0 to 200 microns after calcination restores the properties of gypsum and can be used in the production of gypsum drywall, construction material, etc. Larger fractions, as finished commodity products, find application in agriculture, cement production, landscape design, etc. This indicates the feasibility of processing gypsum drywall waste at the place of its formation, to obtain marketable products, reduce transportation costs, relieve landfills, improve the environment and save mineral resources. Thank you for attention.
We thank the speakers for their interesting presentation, and we are ready to ask a few questions. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so we have a question, and dear speakers, can you answer them orally? Yes? Because we have a question and we can write it or in a chat or just say it orally. What is better for you? Okay, so we will write our questions in chat and hope our speakers will answer these questions. And we are going on to the final report. The final report will be devoted to another very important aspect of sustainable development. Yulia Tereshchenko and Valentina Lavrenenko will present us a study on the topic Sustainable Development Strategies in the Field of Tourism and Recreation in War Conditions in Ukraine.
Yes, thank you for the word. And now I try to share my presentation, our presentation. Share. Okay, tell me if it's okay.
Yes, we see it.
Okay. So let's start. Hi everyone, my name is Yulia Terещенko. I am a PhD student from Kyiv National Economic University, and today I will present our team's study with the topic named Sustainable Development Strategies in the Field of Tourism and Recreation in War Condition. The current study consists of the following parts. Firstly, it's a theoretical basis which provided regarding the formation of strategies in the context of sustainable development. Secondly, it's the potential of tourism and recreation sector in Ukraine, with the analysis of the impact of military operation on this sphere, and also with summarizing of this impact results by the steeple matrix analysis, and with case analysis of the most successful practice in the field of tourism during the war. Thirdly, the author's recommendations for the development of strategies based on sustainable development, containing a list of possible strategic decisions of tourism market participants and descriptions of new forms of tourism with new digital tools in this sphere. And the practical result of this study can be used as a part of the development of strategies by individual market participants for improving their economic and social results and developing the environmental awareness. Tourism is considered one of the most profitable sectors of the economy worldwide. It significantly improves the quality of life and well-being of Ukrainians by stimulating spending in related to the tourism sectors such as transport, trade, and catering, and resulting as a multiplier effect. And in 2019, this indirect impact amounted to 7% of GDP and created 1.2 million jobs. And actually, the scale of the impact of military operations on Ukraine tourism and recreation sector is still difficult to fully estimate because the full-scale war continues now. But in February 2022, the war with Russia paralyzed the tourism industry and had it fully stopped. Large areas in the east, south, and north of Ukraine are mined, and this is about 30% of country's total area. And the full-scale war presents new challenges for the development of tourism sector, which includes several problems. First, zones of occupation and active military operation are dangerous for people. Loss of the big part of the natural, historical, and cultural potential of tourist areas, and destruction of tourism and transport infrastructure. So tourism in Ukraine is losing significant amount of finance. Firstly, this is due to a decrease in the total number of tourists. There were about 4 million foreign tourists in 2020, but in 2022-2023, this figure decreased fourfold, and the same situation is with domestic tourism. Also, due to active hostilities, missile strikes, and mined tourist areas, 13 of 24 regions were left largely without tourism. For analyzing tourism sector, we choose the steeple analysis method, which allows us to describe the factors of the external environment, their positive and negative impact on the development of the company in this industry, and the analysis methodology involved the authors formulating characteristics of individual subfactors and their assessment by market participants. We had conducted in November 2023 the survey and covered 33 respondents representing companies operating in the tourism and recreation sectors. The diagram below demonstrates the greatest impact of economic, social, political, and environmental factors on the activities of tourist companies. And when the company formulating their development strategy, they should be taken into account these factors in the first place. Here we have an example of analyzing of ecological factors. We found out the impact of the factor on the tourism and recreation industry and the strength of this impact on scale from 1 to 10 point. In our study, we analyzed several tourism projects and described the unique experience of this company's successful operation during the war. All projects which we have analyzed are related to supporting Ukrainian citizens during the war. And the study of these cases made it possible to formulate a list of possible strategic decisions of tourism market participants based on the components of sustainable development. This table presents strategic decisions that tourist companies can make depending on the situation in the business environment and taking into account the entrepreneur potential of the tourist companies. Also, during the war, there are new formats of Ukrainian tourism emerged. We have identified 4 types of services related to sustainable tourism. First of all, it's inclusive and recreation tourism, which providing tourist services for military personnel and their families, and also for people who was affected by hostilities in Ukraine. Ecological tourism, which means preference for quiet places where you can enjoy nature and take a break from the bustle of the city. Next 2 types are totally new for Ukraine. First is memorial tourism, which means documenting the consequences of Russia's armed aggression against Ukraine. And the second one is solidarity and volunteer tourism, which is combination of tourism and volunteering to support and quickly restore of the occupied territories. The analysis of the strategies of market participants also showed that they widely use innovative digital tools. They include different travel apps, online platforms, also online formats of tourism and big data and geoanalytics. The main purpose of these tools is to provide access to the tourism industry during major global crisis and collecting important data. So in conclusion, we can say that tourism in Ukraine faces many challenges, but it has already demonstrated resilience and potential. And despite external and internal barriers, the tourism business continues to look for ways to adapt and innovate, and it's all can have a positive impact on the developing of this sector of economy. So thanks for your attention, and if you have any questions, please be free to ask. Me and our team try to ask for all of them.
Thank you a lot for your presentation. And we have one question in chat, the question from Ihor Holoshin. So can you give numeral indicators for types of tourism in Ukraine during the war?
It's a good question. May I please ask 1 minute to answering it, please?
By the way, could you please turn on your... Oh, yes, thank you. You have turned off your screen.
Yeah, it's about indicators question.
Yes, the question is in chat.
Can you repeat, please, question?
Can you give numeral indicators for types of tourism in Ukraine during the war?
No, with my experience, exactly numeral I cannot tell, but general. Before war start, we had about more than 8,000 touristic agencies, and now it's about 800. No, it's a lot latest information. And situation look like that business and entrepreneurship in tourist area must function because we support our country during the war, but in the same time we can see less companies which doing tourist activities, but their work active in this period. And as main speaker told, we have now new directions with touristic activity. It's like memorial tourism, ecological tourism, volunteer tourism. It's very important to support tourism in this time period the war.
Thank you for your answer. And we have one more question. Yes, Sergei Sanko, would you like to ask? Yeah, please.
Would you like? How you interpret a term of sustainable development adapted to tourism? It's deep sense of this term, according to Rio 1982, more other.
Okay, about sustainable development, we know that it's some concept which talk about some balance among what we need to give for people, for customers now, and what we must do for future generation. About tourism, what we can say, now people in Ukraine, our customers, they are exhausted. They are under the stress during the war, and they need some change activities. They need to have some rest. Yes, and in the same time, when they involved in such kind of tourism, like volunteer tourism, like memorial tourism, ecological tourism, they help our environment for future generation. And this directly connection between our touristic strategies and sustainable development.
Thank you very much. But this is very, very problematic question, and it's need discussion.
Yeah, you're right. We can continue discuss. We have our emails. We can talk about this subject.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you a lot for your questions and for your answers. And to summarize your report, we would like to ask whether Ukrainian businesses will be able to continue its operations in the face of the war and support the country's economy.
Yeah, I would like to say a bit more maybe. I had my own research about entrepreneurship during the war. This research was financed by Volkswagen Foundation, and I had many interviews with entrepreneurs, and I can say exactly that business is work in different conditions and in work conditions, and especially in these conditions, business use the strategy of adaptation to survive and to support our country. So business work, it's many difficulties, but business work.
Thank you a lot. So, dear colleagues, the last report has been delivered and all questions have been answered. And thank you a lot for finding time to join us once again. And we would like to thank to everyone here. So we would like to thank Natalia Dutsenko for delivering a speech about resource-saving methods of extracting seeds. We would like to thank Maxim Timchishin for his presentation about methane degassing within Ukraine according to satellite data. We would like to say thank you to Vitaly Makahon for his presentation about assessment of trends in the functioning of the grain industry of the EU countries. And we would like to say thanks for Yulia Semenova and Serhiy Skorativsky for their beautiful work about a seismic hazard assessment. We would like to say thank you to Maxim Kvitko for his presentation about accumulation of heavy metals by different representatives of biota in the operation zone of the Pridniprovska thermal power plant. Also, we would like to say thank you to Serhiy Sanko about his presentation of development of spatial optimization models of social-natural interaction as a way to a sustainable development. We would like to say thanks to Tatiana Tkachenko and Marina Akselenko for their presentation about prospects for using composite preparations based on silica nanosols. We would like to say thank you to Arkady Sedov about his project on geospatial database generation of forest growth using the QGIS software package. Also, we are not forgetting about Lydia Davidida and her presentation, Geoinformation Assessment of Solar Plant Potential in the Ivano-Frankivsk region. We want to say thanks to Daria Arziantseva and Tatiana Samaricheva for their presentation about concession as a tool for improving the budget and tax incentives for investment attractiveness of the tourist complex. We would like to say thank you to Nazar Vanyo and his beautiful presentation about geoinformation modeling. And we would like to say thanks to Boris Onyshchenko and his presentation on experimental research of time for opening and closing of spray in flat and injector nozzles. And we would like to say thank you to Fedoskina Olena and her presentation, gypsum recycling using an inclined chamber vibrating jaw crusher. And finally, we would like to say thank you to Yulia Tereshchenko and Valentina Lavrenenko and for their presentation of sustainable development strategies in the field of tourism and recreation in war conditions in Ukraine. Also, we would like to say thank you one more time to Serhiy Sanko for very active participating. Thank you a lot. And we look forward to further cooperation. Take care of yourselves. Thank you and see you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. And